Up in the sky, something stirred behind the clouds. The sun was setting, and a warm, golden, yolky burn of the day's last embers were bubbling on the horizon. As it melted across the wide canvas above the world, it oozed into soft apricot tones, turning gentle baby pink before brewing into a moody lilac as it hit a few lonesome clouds that dappled the scene. As the expanse stretched on behind me, I could sense a growing richness of colour as it leaked from indigo into a blossoming navy darkness. I glanced in my rearview mirror and confirmed with a small smile that, indeed, just like every day, the night was gently approaching with inky footsteps. I worked a little way from where I was currently calling home, so my commute took about an hour, but the sunrise and sunset always made it worth the drive. The lighter months approaching, I found myself actually arriving earlier and leaving later for shifts just to catch a light show. Usually it was just me, my little car, the long empty country roads, and the paintings in the sky. These were my moments of peace between the tedium of work and the dull, soaring ache of home, and so I savoured them as much as I could. It was as I was soaking up this evening's masterpiece I noticed something unfamiliar. Across the greyish purples at the edge of where the sun's last rays were stretching, there seemed to be a small sliver of light orange stretching across the sky, like a scratch on a window pane. I would have dismissed it as a vapour trail from passing planes, but it was too neat and skinny, as if someone had taken a sharp blade and sliced through the skin of the sky to allow some shimmering other to peek through. I squinted up at the strange scar, and my eyes were flicking down to where the sun was now rapidly retreating in anticipation of the presence of the night. The soft orange wrinkle wasn't bright, it wasn't emitting light, but it was definitely there, standing as a small stark contrast to the rest of the darkening abyss. I leaned forward, further in my seat, my eyes fixed on the strange little wriggle as my car continued forward down the lonely roads. It reminded me of old Eastern paintings of mythical dragons that would writhe across the sky, gods of the elements. It must be a form of illusion or something, like how in the Arctic you can sometimes see 3 suns within a sundog. As I stretched my neck further over my wheel to try and get a better look, I didn't notice how my foot had slowly been increasing pressure on my acceleration. I was transfixed by the little odd apricot-coloured crack in the sky, its whole lovely wrongness in being there at all. As my car steadily picked up speed, a small smile danced across my lips, so I imagined the sliver coming to life and swimming across the night's nebulous expanse, a lone dancer on centre stage. And for a moment my chest drew tight as I stared at this little rogue patch of sky, exactly where it shouldn't be, and I felt my face flinch as a flash of empathy shivered down my spine. All alone in the great expanse, little lost wanderer, where are you going? I hit the other car at roughly 80 miles per hour. The deafening scream of scraping metal and blaring horns splintered through the air as my ribcage slammed into the wheel of my car. Shattered glass pierced my face and I lost all sense of direction. In the movie, when the heroes in a car crash, time slows down as they catapult through the air and they shield their bodies against the carnage. But I'm no hero, and I was simply swallowed into the darkness. I remained unconscious for a matter of days, but when I finally came to, I had 5 broken ribs, a shattered collarbone, and had lost the sight of my right eye from impact. That wasn't even mentioning the facial scarring. A vicious and ugly ribbon of tattered flesh had been stapled roughly together ran from my forehead, over my eye socket and down my jaw. The pain was immeasurable, and so I was fed with a steady supply of drugs constantly. When I looked at myself in the mirror for the first time, I was too high to even recognise the shattered features staring back at me, one eye dazed and foggy, and the other sightless and blood red from the subconjunctival hemorrhage caused on smashing my face into an entire car. I ate my pills, and I allowed myself to become utterly numb, because I didn't have the strength to live like this sober. After I was discharged, I abandoned the idea of trying to come to terms with anything, so I abused the medication I had been provided and rejected any human interaction. I hid in my room, refusing food and staring out the window, out of my mind. I would stare at the sky for hours, looking for that little sliver of orange, and after a couple of hours, usually I would find it. It would take a couple of extra pills, an occasional glug of alcohol, but as my heart rate would begin to bump unsteadily, my thoughts would become strange, the clouds would shift over one another to reveal the small little apricot scar in the sky. It was funny. Sometimes it would look the same shape of the scar on my own face. And in those moments, the loathsome thoughts and hellish desire to claw my skin from my flesh would abate, and there was a small sense of peace that I would savour before I would pass out. Watching the line in the sky became my obsession. Whenever I would finally come to, whatever hour it was, I'd begin my simple routine of take some pills, drink something strong, and begin searching. I began to be able to find it quicker, and it would grow, becoming brighter and shimmering with its strange peachy light. Sometimes I felt I could even hear it, emitting this bizarre, silvery sound that was similar to the whispering of a gentle river. A minor inconvenience was that with the rate I was consuming my medication, I ran out of them fast, but that was okay. I knew where I could get something even better. The whispering began to get louder and the terror in the sky even brighter after I switched to narcotics. I drove closer to my viewing spot, slithering across the sky like a serpent, and I could almost peer inside. It was like staring into magma. It just seemed to shift and bubble, not really taking form, rather just in a constant state of movement. My own scar would begin to itch, and I began a habit of running my fingernails over the mottled flesh as I watched the entrancing shimmering light. I would stay up for days, fueled by stims, just to see how close I could get. I wanted to be able to reach its beauty, to balance out my deformed ugliness. I didn't really care for food anymore, so my bones began to protrude from my skin, which was covered in scars and scabs from my incessant itching and picking with torn nails. I didn't waste any potential viewing time showering, so my hair stuck lank and greasy to my skull. My right eye had never returned to its natural white, and I admit I looked like something a person might see in a fit of sleep paralysis. And I knew my visage was hard to look at, and my voice made it even worse. It was rough and cracked from snorting drugs that would burn my throat and have me chew my tongue until I was choking on my blood. My dealer would never look me in my good eye, even recoiling when I snatched the products out of his hands, but it didn't matter. None of it mattered, because I was so close to becoming beautiful. The scar in the sky was going to tell me how to become beautiful again. It was getting closer, and the whispers were beginning to sound like snatches of voices, caught in the wind. I was so close. I took my usual position after racking some lines, and I feverishly pressed my face against the window. The contact of my skin left greasy smears on the glass, and I frantically wiped them away. Nothing could obscure my vision, you see. My heart began to catch in my throat, and I broke out in sweat as the drugs began to take a hold. The clouds began to swim around one another, and I knew that it would be tonight that I would see it. Slowly, a shimmering light began to emerge, and in glee, I clawed at my own skin, shaking with desire. It slowly slithered into sight, and the whispers started. This was it. I began to catch an odd word like tear, or you, before they drifted out again. The scar in the sky faded before it blinked and disappeared. I slammed my fist against glass with a frustrated scream. I needed more drugs. I needed to get closer. I necked some liquor and snorted some more lines. My vision went in and out, but the scar didn't return. There were whispers, however, they remained. And as they rose in volume, I began to discern sentences. Instructions. My heart began to pound against my bruised rib cage, and I scrabbled around for my mirror, holding it with shaking hands to my face. My gaunt, hellish reflection stared back. In the whispers, they caressed my ears, words like silk. My good eye was pinned open, black as the ocean, and I began to grin through shaky breaths. Yes, of course, yes. I snatched the razor that I cut my lines with and raised it to the scar on my face that matched the one that whispered to me from the sky. I dug the blade into my flesh and dragged it with jagged motions, opening the wound and allowing fresh, hot blood to weep down my face and drip down my chin. With trembling fingers, I let the razor blade fall to the floor as I pushed my nails into the exposed flesh, tugging desperately. Through the whispers that had now seemed to have filled not just the room but my skull, I began to see it. The laughter spilled from my lips and I pulled harder. Yes, there it was, shimmering. As I tore, the skin in my mouth came away. The deformed side of my face was now fully exposed, and then my maw grinned through the soft light that shone through from under the bone. The little apricot scar was me. Underneath, under all the ugliness, I could see it in myself. As I tore harder at my flesh, a warmth flooded my chest, and I felt it. Beautiful. I was beautiful.